Welcome to the Essential Oils Revolution Part 2. This is your host, Dr. Eric Zielinski, and today, back by popular demand, we have the lovely Dr. Janet Roark, who is a veterinarian who specializes in using natural therapies like essential oils. Janet, thanks so much, my dear, for jumping on again.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you today about essential oils and using them with animals.
Janet, you were one of our top most popular talks last year for part 1 of the Essential Oils Revolution. And I love it because you've really been able to just hone deep into this because like we talked about earlier before, this isn't like woo-woo, flowers in the sky stuff. We're talking real evidence-based. This is science, and you've been able to help a lot of people by helping their animals, and you help animals, of course, too. So I will let you know, and everyone, I know I'm going to get chastised for this. So here's my disclaimer. I don't even have a pet. Okay. Okay. I'm that guy. I was raised in like suburban Detroit. I didn't even have a pet. I killed my first goldfish and I was, scarred ever since. So please, please, please don't criticize me because I get criticized for this stuff. I'm asking this information as a wannabe pet lover who has kids who want pets, but more importantly, I'm a researcher and I have really good questions. So folks, don't throw the tomatoes at me because I know what's going to happen. So Janet, I didn't tell you that before the interview, so please be easy on me, okay?
All right, I'll try.
Okay, for those of you who didn't listen last year, I'll introduce you to Janet real quick. Dr. Janet Roark is a veterinarian and owner of Hill Country Mobile Veterinary Service in Austin, Texas. She graduated from Michigan State University's College of Veterinary Medicine in 2005 and has been practicing in Austin since 2009. Dr. Roark uses essential oils as a complement to traditional medicine in her practice, and her passion is preventative medicine and nutrition. And of course, educating others on the safe use of essential oils with all species of animals. You could find her at hillcountrymobilevet.com, especially if you're local to Austin. Take advantage of that. Hire her. She's awesome. If you're not, just check her out, folks, because she's got some really good stuff on her website to look into. Dr. Roark, here's a question. We were discussing this before we got on the interview, but it's so key. I was hoping we could set the tone because not going into, last year you gave more of your why. You could talk a little bit about that, but I'll refer everyone to listen to last year to hear more about you. But I'm just curious, when you discussed to me how heart-wrenching it is talking to your clients who have animals like with osteosarcoma or some other incurable, cancer, and they're like, what oil do I use? Talk to us a little bit about your mindset behind that and how you approach that sort of situation, because what you just shared was just spot on.
Okay, yeah, I get a lot of people that contact me just completely desperate for anything to help save their beloved pet. And things like osteosarcoma, it's an incurable cancer. There's no cure for it. And so what I usually tell them is, I'm so sorry, but there's no cure for osteosarcoma. I can certainly give you some recommendations to help control the pain associated with it and to maybe give you a little bit more time with your pet. And I certainly encourage those people to work with a veterinary oncologist as well and use traditional therapies in conjunction with the more non-traditional therapies like essential oils to help keep their animals comfortable and functioning as long as they can before they have to make a tough decision.
So you're telling me there isn't an oil for everything then, huh?
Unfortunately, there is no cure for eventually we all die. So
no cure for death.
There's no cure for death. We can prolong things a little bit sometimes, not always, and we can help, like I said, make animals a little more comfortable when they're uncomfortable. But it's an evolving science, but we haven't created immortal pets yet last I checked. So
it's true that cats don't have 9 lives then?
Well, you'd be surprised. Okay. But yeah, okay. Eventually after that 9th one, they end up having to get buried at some point.
Okay. Not to jest, because I know my wife had a dog for many years, and once the dog passed, it was like a family member, and I get that. So the reason why I wanted to ask that, folks, was to put the context into this, and this is really the context for the entire summit and for everything that I do, is that essential oils are part of the puzzle. It could be one tool in the tool belt. It's not the only thing. And I will say, thankfully, we have a great awareness. And that is because of primarily some major brands in the essential oil industry that have put out there, hey, we could do everything. But the reality is that awareness that now millions of people are using essential oils, there's a lot of misguided advice and a lot of misguided aspirations and hope. I mean, really, essential oils can't cure death. And so there isn't an oil for that. And so we got to remember that. And so with that, that's the context of this. And I love what Janet's going to share because she really shares just a holistic view of this whole thing. So let's go into an aromatherapy 101 or maybe like an animal aromatherapy 101. What do people need to know, Janet, before they even start using essential oils in animals?
Okay, yeah. So essential oils, basically what they are is they're highly concentrated, lipid soluble, volatile aromatic compounds that are distilled from plants. And it's important to note that, kind of like what you mentioned, not all essential oils are created equally. When you're considering whether or not to use an essential oil around you or your pets, you really should be very careful in considering the quality of the essential oil. Ask questions like, has it been third-party tested? Is it considered a pharmaceutical grade essential oil? And that's just a term I use. It's not a trademark type term. Is it safe to use topically and internally? Many essential oils on the market today are considered, or are what I consider, perfume grade. So they may say on the label that it's quote unquote 100% pure, but they often contain extenders or other substances in addition to the essential oil that are often toxic to small animals like dogs and cats. Those should be avoided at all costs. If you're not sure of the quality of the oil that you're purchasing, it's best to consult with an expert, such as, your local veterinarian. And if it says on the label that it's for aromatic use only, you probably want to avoid that particular oil with your pets. High quality essential oils can really benefit animals. Many essential oils have, emotional benefits as well as physical benefits. Because they're lipid soluble, they can be absorbed into the cells through the cell membrane. This is one of the reasons why they're so incredibly powerfully effective. Since they're distilled from plants and no two plants are identical, essential oils don't show the same bacterial resistance that some of our synthetically made therapies do. This is really exciting as a scientist, knowing that we have one more tool in our toolbox to combat difficult to treat conditions and pain simply by enhancing an animal's own immune system through a natural approach. There's a lot of research available that shows that many essential oil constituents have antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, antitumoral, and antioxidant properties. Essential oils are really exciting, and that's pretty much a basic, here's what essential oils are, here's what you need to know about them.
This isn't anything that you learned at MSU, is it?
No, certainly not. This is something that I've had to pretty much teach myself. And in Texas, the state of Texas requires that their veterinarians get 17 hours of continuing education a year. And so when I do my continuing education, I really like to focus on some of the more non-traditional therapies like acupuncture and nutrition and supplements like essential oils and that sort of thing. So sometimes at some of the CE, they talk about them a little bit. And usually if it's somebody that is really trustworthy and somebody who is well known for it, I'll bring them to the side afterwards and I'll talk to them about essential oils specifically. And certainly I've done a lot of just book reading and teaching myself that way. I'm super nerdy and I really like to read research articles. So that's where I got a lot of my information, just from reading articles on PubMed.
I love it. I love it. I'm seeing a potential roadblock for people listening right now who go to their vet and then they ask a question and the vet's like, I don't know. I didn't learn that in school. So I'm thinking, assuming, and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, assuming that most veterinarians don't specialize in essential oil therapy, what would you recommend to some people? I don't want to say find a new vet, but what do you recommend? Are there some good resources beside having folks comb through PubMed and read the tomes of literature out there? What can people do that are trying to figure out some do's and don'ts and things about, oils and pets?
So basically there's a few books out there that are actually written for regular people that don't even have pets like you, Eric.
I'm a regular people.
The one that I really like, probably the most, just because it's super user-friendly, there's a book called Spoil Your Pet. It's by Mia Frezzo, who's a veterinarian out east, and Jan Jeremiah, who's a friend of mine. And they wrote a pretty comprehensive short book called Spoil Your Pet. And it's a great resource for anyone to have. I don't necessarily agree with 100% of their recommendations in there, but it's a good place to start for sure.
Okay. So I'm going to go take advantage of the tens of thousands of people listening right now. And folks, here's the thing. There aren't a lot of resources out there, and that's kind of what I was thinking, and Dr. Janet just kind of confirmed that. If you want Dr. Janet Roark to write a book, I want you to write a comment below. Go to her website, hillcountrymobilevet.com. Let's storm her with just requests, because she told me earlier before we got on the call, she was interested, but like most people, she only has 30 hours in a day, and it's hard to fit that in. So
I'd love to write a book.
Hey, here's the thing. Tens of thousands of people are listening. So even if you could just get 100 people, you know what I mean? So anyway, we need a book. So with that, I love it. I love it. And maybe this could be part of the book. I'm sure it is. And these questions, especially, because what is, Janet, the number one question you get asked when it comes to using essential oils and animals in your practice?
Oh my gosh. So by far, the number one question that I get when it comes to essential oils is, are essential oils safe to use with my animal? And that's a really good question, and it's really a case-by-case thing. So let's go through a little bit of the safety stuff when it comes to using essential oils with animals, and we'll go through a couple of the different species and whatnot. Essential oils can really be safely used around animals, and they can really receive a lot of benefit from them in a lot of different ways. Large animal herbivores such as horses, cattle, llamas, alpacas, and even sheep and goats. With those animals, essential oils applied topically directly to the area of concern or along the spine, even without dilution, or you can give them internally. Basically, how you would apply them to a person, a human, is both safe and effective. With small animals such as cats and dogs, you do have to be a bit more careful. With dogs, there are a lot of different sizes of dogs. You got St. Bernards, and you got Great Danes, the giant side, you got little Chihuahuas and Min Pins, and all sorts of other teeny tiny dogs that weigh, 4 pounds. So there's a big array of dogs out there. And in general, the smaller the dog you have, the more you want to dilute the essential oil. That's a good rule of thumb. Oils I tend to avoid with dogs in general include melaleuca, birch, camphor, and wintergreen, simply because there are safer, less controversial oils out there that we can use that are just as effective. With cats, this is probably the most controversial topic that I come across, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate mail by saying this, because I do use essential oils with cats, and very successfully. They do lack an enzyme in their liver that is important in the metabolism of many types of things. This makes cats really susceptible to all kinds of toxicity, and that includes, different plants, obviously, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, chocolate, caffeine, lead, zinc, lots of different pesticides. They're pretty much, there's a lot of things that are toxic to cats. So the oils to stay away from and use something different if you can are the oils that are high in phenols and ketones as far as direct application, which is topical or internal for your cat. And those include basil, birch, cinnamon, clove, fennel, melaleuca, nutmeg, oregano, peppermint, thyme, rosemary, spearmint, and wintergreen. I know it sounds like a lot, but there's a lot of different essential oils out there. Mm-hmm. They're also pretty sensitive to D-limonene containing oils, and those are your citrus oils, bergamot, grapefruit, lemon, lime, orange, tangerine, and dill as well. Has a lot of D-limonene in it. So for animals with seizure disorders, there's some oils that are thought to lower the seizure threshold. So those oils should be avoided with animals with seizure disorders. That includes basil, black pepper, camphor, eucalyptus, fennel, hyssop, sage, rosemary, and wintergreen. Also, animals with any bleeding disorders or animals that have difficulty clotting or are being treated with an anticoagulant, they should avoid topical application of oils such as birch, cassia, cinnamon, clove, fennel, oregano, and wintergreen. Just like with people, caution should be used with pregnant or nursing animals, and hot oils should be avoided or highly, highly diluted. The oils that you definitely want to avoid include basil, cassia, cinnamon, clary sage, rosemary, thyme, wintergreen, and white fir. Now, some other different types of species that we haven't talked about yet, some of the smaller pocket pets and rabbits. So rabbits, guinea pigs, sugar gliders, chinchillas, hamsters, those types of animals are actually what we call hindgut fermenters. So you want to be really careful when you're using essential oils with strong antibacterial properties around those animals, such as cinnamon, cassia, oregano, those types of oils, because they really have a very delicate digestive flora that you don't want to inadvertently disrupt by using your essential oils. So you want to be careful with the antibacterial oils with hindgut fermenters. And then with birds are, with the exception of chickens, are very sensitive to, these are more like, your pet birds in your house, are really sensitive to essential oils. And I typically only recommend using water diffusion with these birds. Avoiding the hot oils might be prudent, but I usually tell bird owners and small animal owners what I tell all my pet owners, and that's that, I think it's really interesting that so many people will put a commercial chemical-filled air freshener in every room in their house without thinking twice about it, but are super concerned about harming them with essential oils. I love that people are cautious, and they should be with their pets and the animals that they love in their house. But in general, each individual animal is different, and they have their own preferences and dislikes and sensitivities, just like people do. And I always tell people just to observe their pet's behavior. If their animal is behaving normally, all is well. If it's behaving abnormally, that might be an oil that they're sensitive to, and you might want to avoid in the future. They're really, really good about telling you. You just have to observe.
Janet, that makes me, I just keep on coming back to a question I keep on thinking to myself. That brings me back to, what about all these wallflowers and Glade plugins and aerosols and things? I've never heard anyone, maybe I'm wrong, but I've never heard anyone say, oh, I don't use that because of my animal. It's not like, oh, I don't have that nice scent because it's my cat doesn't like it, sort of thing. When we're talking about this list of do's and don'ts, for oils, is this specifically for topical use, or you mentioned diffusion? Where does that come into play? Are all these safe for diffusion, or what?
I will say that most of the ones that I'm talking about, that's typically for topical application of the oils. If you're using a water diffuser in an open room, you can pretty much, in general, for the most part, I'm not going to say always, diffuse pretty much any essential oil. I diffuse everything in my own house and in pretty much every room in my house, actually. And believe me, I have pets. So and my animals, and I have a really sensitive cat. I have a cat who's she's geriatric. She's 17 years old. She's completely deaf. She's epileptic. She has asthma, and she has a heart murmur and has all kinds of other problems. But she usually, regardless of what I'm diffusing, if it's one she likes, what she'll do is she'll curl up as close as she can to the diffuser and try and get the benefits from it.
Love it.
And every once in a while I'll diffuse something that she doesn't really like. And when I do, she just leaves the room. She's just like, I don't think I like that one. And she'll just leave. She's a smart kitty. So animals will tell you. And when she does that, I take note of it, and I tend not to diffuse that one very often when she's around. So.
But that's more of a preference. It's not like a safety concern, though.
No, it's more of a preference. Yeah, no, I would never
get
diffuse anything that would cause harm to any of my animals.
I get, that's what I keep on thinking, because I can't tell you how many times I've been around homes that they're smoking. I mean, cigarettes and closed doors in a vault, and their cat's there. And it's like, okay. So what about internal use? So essentially, just to summarize, diffusion, especially with the water diffuser, is pretty much safe as long as it's an open room and, area. That's pretty good for most oils. Topical, you just gave a great list of do's and don'ts. What about internal?
So internal application is another thing that's really controversial. You can apply oils internally in drinking water. You just want to make sure it's very dilute. What I typically recommend for dogs is 1 drop per 2 cups of drinking water, and you want to make sure it's in a non-plastic water dish, because essential oils, as we know, and poor quality plastic don't always get along. And then like for birds and smaller pets, I usually recommend a drop per liter of water. For drinking water, I don't recommend putting any essential oils in drinking water for cats, just because they tend not to want to drink the water at all. Cats are easily offended. Let's just leave it at that. And so if there's a smell that they're offended by, they'll actually stop drinking, which can be quite detrimental, as you might imagine.
Oh, really?
And so in general, I don't recommend using essential oils in drinking water for cats. Now, in food, that's typically what I recommend for internal application is, adding a drop or a toothpick drop to wet food in general, or to a treat. And that's a really good way to get essential oils internally into your animal. And typically, if you're giving internal essential oils, it's for therapeutic purposes. It's because you're wanting to address a specific condition or support an animal for a specific thing. I typically don't recommend using oils internally every single day for, just general support. Although there are a couple of oils that are very, very good for general support, such as, frankincense. Cinnamon's another good one, but it's a hot oil, so I tend to recommend only using it for, 10 days on, 10 days off type of a thing. So that's kind of a general rule for internal application. Dogs and cats, and horses and cattle and chickens, and they love essential oils in their food. They actually tend to, be drawn to it. They like it a lot. So internal use with the large animals, with the herbivores, I use regularly. Dogs and cats, they have really, really sensitive senses of smell. And, just like with people, there's picky eaters. And so if it smells funny to them, they won't eat it. And with those types of animals, you'll want to do more of a capsule and give them a capsule where they can't actually smell the oils to give them internally. Does that answer your question?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I mean, perfectly. I'm just thinking now, what sort of things can we use oils for when it comes to our livestock and our household pets?
Okay, yeah, so pretty much everything. I love it. You can use them for everything. Some of the more common things I use them for are behavioral issues. They're really great in conjunction with training for issues such as like anxiety issues, like separation anxiety or thunderstorm anxiety, or horses that are really herd bound or fearful, or even fear-based aggression. With those types of issues, I really like using lavender alone or a combination of lavender and vetiver just to help calm them down. And it's been absolutely wonderful. People with dogs with thunderstorm anxiety have just told me, I have countless stories of them just telling me how lavender has saved their sanity when it comes to that type of thing. And fireworks is another thing that a lot of dogs are really afraid of. And if it's the 4th of July and there's going to be fireworks, and you start diffusing some lavender, or you put some lavender on their collar, it doesn't seem to bother them at all. So that's one of the things I really, really use essential oils for, is behavioral type things. Also transitions. So like when you're bringing a new puppy home, like I just had a lady yesterday who contacted me and was like, I'm bringing a new puppy home. I'm really worried about the transition because, she was getting weaned from her mother and she doesn't have any other animals at home. And she's like, what can I do? And I was like, I usually recommend a combination of lavender and myrrh for those type of adjustment periods. And she tried it, and she contacted me today, and she's like, I can't believe how calm the transition was, and everything has been so good and absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. So yeah,
Awesome.
any kind of transitions, like if you're moving, it can be extremely stressful for pets. Adding a new animal into a herd or into your house, any kind of big changes like that, I really like lavender and myrrh. Ear infections is another really common one. With ear infections, I tend to tell people just make sure you regularly clean out your pet's ears. When people tell me they don't clean out their animals' ears, I usually ask them, well, how often do you clean out your own ears? And then they look at me and feel guilty. So, you can actually make your own natural ear cleaner. Super easy one is equal parts apple cider vinegar and witch hazel. I like that non-alcoholic witch hazel, because the alcoholic can sting, especially if you have irritated ears. And then once you clean out the ears, then you can, around the base of the ear, apply a diluted lavender, frankincense, geranium, and basil. And that is really great for kind of most types of ear infections. Another one that we use essential oils a lot with, in conjunction with other things, is allergies. So many animals have allergies these days, and it's an extremely complex, difficult problem to deal with. But with dogs and large animals, this is when I do recommend internal use pretty much all the time. A combination of frankincense, lemon, lavender, and peppermint 2 to 3 times a day, as well as omega-3 supplementation. I always recommend working with your veterinarian in these cases to determine the source of the allergy, what the animal is actually allergic to, because addressing the root cause is primarily what you want to focus on to help prevent the itching. And sometimes it takes a while to figure out, but believe me, it's very much worth it, in my opinion.
Again, is this just those lemon, lavender, peppermint, and frankincense, I think you said, right, in a capsule, and you slip that in the food? Or how do you do that?
Yeah, you can do it in the food, or you can give it in a capsule. This one I typically recommend using a capsule because it is such a strong smelling combination of oils. A lot of animals won't just eat the food readily with it in there. Some will. Some, like labs, they'll eat anything you give them, including things that they're not supposed to eat. But with horses, you don't have to mix it. You don't have to. Capsules are really difficult with large animals, but with small animals, with dogs, and this isn't what I recommend for cats at all. Cats, I have a different recommendation for them. But yeah, in a capsule is usually the best way. This is accepted 2 to 3 times a day.
So what about cats then? What would you recommend?
With cats, I typically recommend just starting with lavender and applying it topically. So cats are meticulous groomers, so you always have to keep that in mind, actually, in that anything that you apply topically to a cat, they will also be getting internally. They're meticulous groomers, and so if you apply lavender topically, they end up ingesting some of it at some point. So I usually start out with just lavender, and if more is needed, you can add a little bit of dilute frankincense or dilute myrrh in those cases.
Awesome. What else we got? We got allergies. We got ear infections. What I'm hearing you tell me is the same stuff that everyone else is telling me about humans. So, I mean,
it's very similar. Yes. There's just, the things that we already talked about as far as the safety and things to avoid. Those are really the things that you need to remember. And then other than that, you can usually translate things from the literature with humans into veterinary medicine. Like with seizures is a really common one that we talk about all the time. Frankincense. So same thing with humans. You use frankincense and omega-3 supplementation. Neoplasia is very complicated, and there's so many different types of cancer. Uncomplicated cases can really benefit from the support of, frankincense and sandalwood. But like I said before, I usually recommend working with a veterinary oncologist in these cases. And there's essential oils for liver support, kidney support, immune support, general health, just like with people. And we just kind of titrate down the amount that we're giving them and dilute it a little bit more for the smaller animals, and we go from there.
So I know we set the whole context of the discussion of, hey, oils aren't going to cure death and there isn't an oil for everything. However, the reality is a lot of people listening have their own little success stories or miracle cases. So do you have anything really interesting or fun that you want to share from helping someone like, wow, that really did something unbelievable on one of your patients?
Yeah, I have a couple of patients that are seizure animals, and we've been able to totally take them off of their seizure medication because of frankincense and regular use of frankincense. And that's probably my favorite success story whenever that happens. And it's so reliably successful in most cases. There are some cases that, they need the additional medication as well, but they can often decrease the frequency or the dose that they're giving with the added frankincense. Yeah, those are my favorite cases. And then I have multiple allergy cases that, have been completely eliminated the itching and the frustration. And, I had one case where she was even considering finding a new home for the animal because she just couldn't tolerate the itching. And with this combination of frankincense, lemon, lavender, and peppermint, as well as omega-3 supplementation, and we also addressed nutrition. We also addressed some additional supplements that we added in that particular case, and she was able to determine the source of the allergy. And with regular bathing as well, I'm pretty sure we did add lavender to the bath as well, topical lavender. She was able to get to the point where she was able to keep her animal in that particular case.
That's awesome.
Very cool. Yeah.
So for the animals that you've helped with seizures, what's your administrative guidelines for the frankincense? A couple drops in a capsule internally, or what are you doing?
Yes, I do recommend internal application of frankincense in those cases, and it depends on the size of the animal. So with cats and dogs less than 20 pounds, I recommend starting out with 1 drop of frankincense orally twice daily, in addition to the omega-3 supplementation. The larger the animal or the more complex the case, you can increase either the frequency of application or increase the number of drops that you're giving in those cases. I typically recommend increasing the frequency before increasing the number of drops, just because it seems to work a lot better with animals and you have a lot less toxic episodes. Well, with frankincense, I don't think I've ever had a toxic episode, honestly, but with other oils, animals tend to react more with more drops as opposed to the same amount of drops given more frequently, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And that actually brings up another point. What sort of signs and symptoms would a pet owner see or notice in their animal once they're maybe dealing with, like you said, a toxicity reaction?
Okay, that's a really good question. So things that you want to look for are any changes in behavior. Certainly there's some drastic ones, like they're rolling around on the floor, clearly uncomfortable. Toxic exposure of certain oils have been reported, and some symptoms include, seizures, muscle tremors, even to the point of being comatose. These are usually very, very high doses of essential oils being given to these animals, though. I've never seen any of these cases where it's that bad. Usually what you see is skin sensitivity, a redness at the point of application, eyes squinting if you're diffusing, that sort of thing. And if or they're rubbing a lot, or they're scratching at their face, really you're just looking for any kind of a negative change in behavior. And if that happens and the oil was applied topically, I always tell people, make sure that you're applying a vegetable oil, such as fractionated coconut oil. That's typically what I use for all my patients. Do not use water to try and dilute it. That will just drive the oil in deeper. You can apply some dish soap to the area as well and rinse it off that way.
Those are really good points. And as we go through this more, I keep on thinking about children and geriatric patients who don't have the ability to communicate. Like someone in a coma, or someone with dementia or Alzheimer's who lost their ability to speak. I mean, really, animals could be put in that sort of category, I guess. Human type of behaviors that can't communicate. Because again, it'd be great if your dog could say, "Hey, hold on a second, I don't like this," but they don't. So
yeah. Well, they can't tell us in words. They tell us in behaviors. Yep.
Same thing like our children. So folks, this information I'm seeing very valuable, especially as a father of 4 children. I see that because we got to look at our children, especially the ones who can't communicate, in this same light. We always got to be looking, especially as we use essential oils around them or on our children. Good advice. Janet, this is awesome. I'm learning a ton here. I'm taking good notes. This is awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. So a couple more things. Let's talk a little bit about livestock and poultry. And when we were talking about some talking points, you use this phrase, essential oils for producers. Like, what is a producer? What's a livestock producer, and how do you use oils?
So a livestock producer, if they're listening, they know who they are.
Okay.
They're people who produce livestock. So livestock and poultry, the poultry industry and that sort of thing. These are animals that are actually raised for human consumption. So they're for people to eat. They're, They probably wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for the fact that people ate them. So all my vegetarian friends are going to be mad at me and send me hate mail now. But it is what it is. And so we want healthy animals going into the food chain, and we want to have animals that are free from antibiotics. These are all hot topics in media and everything else. People are really concerned about the food industry and what is going into these animals that are eventually going to be consumed by people. And so it's pretty fun to have essential oils in your toolbox as a producer because, for example, oregano has amazing antibacterial properties and antiviral properties. And so if you add it to the feed, you actually don't have to add any antibiotics to the feed, and you can have a natural product that you're feeding your animals and actually have a decreased death rate in your herd or your flock. And typically what I recommend for those guys is, depending on the brand of essential oils, I typically recommend about 10 drops of essential oil per 50 pounds of feed, just as a preventative for those animals. And they've actually had studies, and there's actually whole turkey farms in this country that are using essential oils instead of antibiotics. And I think that is the coolest, most exciting thing ever. And it's just going to make it so that our herds and our flocks are more healthy, which in turn makes the food that you and I are eating healthier and safer, which is so, it crosses the whole board. But yeah, and you can do that with poultry as well. And typically what the turkey producers are doing is they're using that oregano in their feed for their birds. You can also use cinnamon, also another really great one that has antibacterial, antiviral properties. So you're going to have more animals surviving, healthy, living, producing more meat for you, and that sort of thing. So it's really neat industry. It's a tough industry to get into, get people to change their minds on. It's a little bit of a good old boys club over there. But I think if we get more producers on board with using essential oils, I think it's going to be better for everyone. It's going to be better for the food chain in general.
Janet, I'm really glad you mentioned that. I did an interview recently about the microbiome and about how, what are some really key issues of essential oils and public health and all that all created. And one of the things I found out when I was doing the research on a public health perspective, this is a huge, huge issue about what we're doing, how we're using these chemicals, how we're using these pesticides, and what it's doing to the animal. And then ultimately, whether or not you're a vegetarian or not, it all affects us one way or another. But ultimately, people that consume these animal-based products, you are what they eat. We forget that. You are what they eat. And this stuff is bad. It's bad news bears. There's nothing good to say about it. And I love it. I love it. I love oregano.
Scary.
Yeah, we could stop this. I mean, we could really stop this problem.
I want to get the word out there. I hope they're listening, and I hope they spread the word, and if you're listening, guys, and you know any producers, you got to get them hooked on oregano or cinnamon. It's awesome.
And it doesn't have to be super costly. And you got to think they're also using antibiotics. And this is what really floored me. And I know this isn't the scope of this topic, but for those of you who are producers, you're listening, a lot of you use antibiotics as prevention. And the problem with that is that's producing resistance. And so when you do get to a situation where your livestock is ill, you got to pump them up with God knows how much amount just because you've already created resistance because of this low dose amount. And the FDA actually said, and this is shocking, the FDA went, I forget what it was, 50, 60 years ago, the FDA went on record and said, literally, it is better that you use main doses instead of this little microdose, because this microdose approach is doing more harm. And now how has it affected you and I? We're creating antibiotic-resistant bacteria that are on us, humans, not just animals.
I know. It's terrible.
Yeah, this is an activist issue. This isn't just, hey, and this is where the vegetarians and the vegans should be livid because, folks, this is affecting us, whether you're vegetarian or vegan or meat eater.
Yes, absolutely. And there's a way to prevent it, and it's with using essential oils, and it'll just makes the whole world a better place to live.
I can see us all. We're you know the Michael Jackson song. We're all holding hands with oils. I mean, literally, this is a good solution, folks. But anyway, I know this isn't the topic, but hey, I mean, you're the only one talking about animals this summit go around. So we're gonna squeeze you for all you're worth right now.
And public health is something I'm very passionate about. We all should be very passionate about, and it's something that I'm really excited about, and it's something we can do something about.
I agree. Well, cool. Boy, oh boy, we're getting out of time, unfortunately. I noticed that right around 45 minutes, everyone kind of glosses over. So it's like, we got to wrap this up. Janet, hey, can you give us some of your favorite essential oil DIY tips and recipes and stuff, like stuff that people can go home to and use right now?
Okay, yes,
Cool.
I would love to. So one of my favorite ones to use is basically a Hotspot spray or a wound spray. And what I usually do with this is in a 15-ounce bottle, you can put 10 drops of frankincense, 10 drops of myrrh, and 10 drops of lavender, and you top it off with either colloidal silver or aloe vera juice. And you can use that for any kind of wound or hot spot. It's really great for hot spots. Myrrh actually has a nice numbing component. And so if you have a dog that's really, really itching one spot, it's nice to put that on there. A nice anxiety stress solution is you can put in a 15-ounce bottle, you can put 20 drops of lavender, 10 drops of cedarwood, 5 drops of vetiver, and just top it off with a carrier oil. And that's a nice dilute anti-anxiety blend right there that I use a lot. For doggy breath, there's one that I like for doggy breath, and I'll use 5 drops of cinnamon, 10 drops of myrrh, and 10 drops of peppermint in an actually 2-ounce bottle, and you can actually spray that right in your dog's mouth. They actually kind of like it.
Oh,
yeah. And then another one for lumps and bumps. So for any kind of benign cancer type situation, any kind of bumps like that, in a 15-ounce bottle, do 10 drops frankincense, 10 drops sandalwood, 5 drops arborvitae, and 5 drops of wild orange, and top that off with a carrier oil. So that gives you a couple. I also gave you some other ones previously that weren't specific recipes, but some good help with that.
awesome. Hey, thank you so much. I mean, this has really just been a great talk, and I know we're going to get a lot of questions. And remember, folks, if you want Dr. Roark to write a book, put on a comment below. I believe in capitalism, supply and demand. So if we create the demand, she'll produce, right, Janet?
Sure.
when you
Clear
get that
my
sabbatical.
calendar.
I know we all need a sabbatical. I will tell you though, once I started getting 30 hours in a day, it really opened up things, and now I need 35. I just. Well, anyway, any last minute thoughts or encouragement to folks that are maybe some folks right now? I always like to ask our speakers an opportunity to give people hope, because I can sense a lot of people who love their animals are just, I don't know, they're at wit's end. They don't know what to do. They might be losing an animal, a loved one, and maybe we can give them some hope, and maybe some strategies on how to go forward and figure out that, we can do this together.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people, essential oils are great. They're a great complement to traditional veterinary medicine, but they don't replace traditional veterinary medicine. And I always tell people, I will help you, with what essential oils to use or whatever you need. And if you want to reach out to me, I have a Facebook page. You can put in your request, and I will try my best to help everyone I can. But you still want to take your animals to your regular veterinarian twice a year for regular checkups, because the way you're going to be able to keep your animal the healthiest to the longest is if you catch stuff as early as possible. And so with regular veterinary exams, that's really going to help you do that. So please don't stop seeing your regular veterinarian just because you have some essential oils. But essential oils are awesome. They're scientifically proven. They have amazing properties, and they can truly benefit you and your pet. And if you're not sure what what to use. I always tell people you can always just try, or you can always contact me and I'd be happy to help you. So,
well, thanks for offering that. And where do people and how do they find you on Facebook?
So my Facebook page is www.facebook.com/EODVM.
EODVM.
Yes.
Let me go type that out. Oh, also, if you go on the search bar, look up Essential Oil Vet -Janet Roark, DVM. Cool.
That's me.
Dr. Roark, you're lovely. I appreciate you. You know, if my daughter gets her druthers, I'll end up buying her a puppy, and I will be calling you as my lifeline. Really, this has been a great talk, and so thank you so much. And folks, thank you so much for joining the Essential Oils Revolution Part 2. We are reaching literally tens of thousands of people around the globe, so please share, join our mission, share this information, click on the banner beside or below, give it to a loved one, because we want the message to be spread that we can use essential oils safely and effectively for people, for animals, and for all sorts of things. So as always, this is your host, Dr. Eric Zielinski. My hope and prayer is that you and your family truly experience the abundant life. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.